Let's start recording. Thank you.
Okay. May I go ahead and start? Okay. Good morning, Council. Thank you so much for your time. It's my pleasure today that we want to do a work session about fleet. Just as a little background, I've been a council of Bowerman and also want to welcome on board. And that I've been with the county about 2.5 years. And one of the things that when I start with the county, looking at each divisions and some of the efficiencies that we can implement and changes that we need to be doing, because our goal is to make sure we are a good steward of the taxpayers and use our tax dollars efficiently. One of the divisions that we initially thought that saw and need a lot of work, and right before I joined the county, there was a study done by Mercury Report, and we had reviewed that, and they had identified some needed changes and efficiencies that need to be made with the division. And then we further look at the division and see what other issues that need to be addressed. So today we want to go over the changes that has been made within the fleet, because one of the things that we want to make sure that we run this like a business and that remain competitive. We're getting a lot of value for this and providing great service not only for the other departments and divisions in public works, but also within the community. So today we're going to go over some of the changes that's been made and some of the other business planning that we're going to be doing within the fleet, some of the deficiencies and challenges that we had faced with fleet and how we are addressing it or has been addressed. So next slide, please. So it's my great pleasure that I want to introduce, and Eva and Shay you already know, but I'd like to introduce them again. Shay is our manager for the fleet. She's been with us actually about a year, so happy anniversary, Shay. And she brings a wealth of experience, 23 years in fleet, and she has a lot of experience in government fleet, and she has a lot of credentials in business administration, a certified automotive fleet manager, certified sustainable manager for the fleet. And she has done a wealth of changes to positive and made a lot of improvement that she's going to get into in her presentation. And also like to introduce Eva Henny. She's our new finance manager. She's been with us about close to 6 months, and she's brought a lot of positive changes within the group. And she has spearheaded with Shay on some of the changes needed to be made with fleet in terms of deficit that we had identified. She brings a wealth of experience, almost 15 years in finance. She has a lot of credential in finance, and she has a master's in economics. So we're really happy to have her and what they have contributed to within the fleet. With that, I'll turn it over to Shay so she can start the presentation of the fleet and the changes that's been made, and then they'll go back and forth with Eva on the finance portion of it. With that, Shay.
Thank you, Ahmad, and good morning, Council. I would like to start out. Would you mind switching to the next slide, please? So this is my team, and I would like to introduce you to them. We have 14 technicians, 2 of which are technician floor leads. We also have 2 part specialists, a custodian, 1 procurement specialist, and 2 administrative support staff other than myself. We operate a day and a swing shift so that we are available for service as many hours as possible. The technicians and service writer have served Clark County combined, just the technicians and the service writer, for over 231 years combined. And if you add that to the rest of the staff, for a combined total of over 300 years experience supporting customer departments and ultimately communities in Clark County. And I have been extremely grateful for this opportunity and to have inherited this really amazing team, and who all of us are very proud to be doing this work for the county. Next slide, please. So to begin, I'd like to start off discussing why an internally managed fleet program is generally the industry standard for government fleets. One of the biggest reasons is because of the dedicated service. There's no waiting in line with the public. Immediate attention is given to county vehicles, which is especially important when we deal with first responders. Our availability of service is hard to beat since we're open from 6:30 a.m. To 12:30 a.m. That's 18 hours a day of support for our customers. Our emergency response support means that the fleet team automatically moves to 12 hours on and 12-hour off shifts whenever emergencies or inclement weather response is required of other departments. We automatically change our schedule to make sure that we're here to support them 24 hours. Consolidated management is a big reason why an internally managed fleet management program is so important. County division managers such as roads, parks, public health, they don't have the expertise or frankly the bandwidth to manage their scope of work. And then on top of that would have to manage their fleet needs, things like procurement, maintenance scheduling, crash management, on top of their focused work, that would just make their lives so much harder. So this is important when we think about making sure that we stay in line with manufacturer specifications and maintenance standards. And this is also extremely important when it comes to record keeping. The county division managers would have to maintain all of those maintenance and repair records on their own, which would definitely increase our reporting liability risks. My team have very equipment specific knowledge. Our county techs are specifically trained and knowledgeable about county equipment and frankly, the operators. They have good relationships with their customers and individual operators. Our consistency is important because as we work towards fleet standardization, we have inspection checklists that are standardized. Every tech has the same list of requirements for a vehicle. It's maintenance and repair procedures, and that's not the case if you go from vendor to vendor to get different work done for fleet repair. And then finally, the increased safety that we provide. Fleet staff is really focused on keeping county equipment safe and operational. And our inspections cover stem to stern, really just identifying what any vehicle or piece of equipment needs to make sure that it is safe and reliable. And it doesn't come from an outside pressurized sales incentive to find work that needs to be done. We just do what needs to be done to keep everything as safe as possible. Next slide, please.
We can change this slide just to kind of further perspective, Council. The fleet division is managing just under 900 vehicles that serves the county. So just kind of putting in numbers of vehicles that we are managing.
Yes, thank you, Ahmad. So when I came on, first order of business when I started, it was to review the two consultant reports that had been done, one by Envision in 2019 and Mercury in 2018. And after reviewing each of these reports a couple of times and searching for comparison, these are the common themes that became apparent. Our policies and procedures need review and updating for current best practices. Customer departments were unsatisfied with things such as our communication, our procurement practices, and frankly, lack of transparency. There was an appearance of a lack of productivity from shop personnel. Our shop rates were very outdated and not able to cover the costs of our shop operations. There is a dedicated capital reserve fund shortage, which meant that replacing vehicles on schedule is and will continue to be for a while an issue, and historically has been an issue. Much of the fleet is very old and too old, which creates much higher costs of repairs and ultimately total cost of ownership. And all of that correlates to the life cycles as they are. We need to reevaluate, get understanding of total cost of ownership at this point, and make sure that as a general practice, we work to keep that as low as possible. Next slide, please. Excuse me. So after review and comparison of the consultants' reports and some internal study of my own, these were the projects that I got to work on for 2020. Updating our shop labor rate, unpacking the issues or the perception of lack of productivity, figuring out how best to address the capital budget issues so we can start improving the health of the fleet, improving our procurement process, rebuilding customer relationships and their confidence in the services we provide, beginning the steps towards putting a sustainable lens over the fleet division in general, and then developing a patrol vehicle corral for the sheriff's office. Next slide, please. In mid to late 2019, it was discovered that the dedicated capital reserve fund had about a $19 million budget shortfall. Eva will be talking in more detail about the major contributing factor to the shortage was that our shop labor rate was not high enough to cover operations. The rate was $97 an hour, a figure that hasn't been recalculated for over a decade as far as I could tell. And after working carefully with the finance team to factor in all operational costs, to include administrative, the fuel management program, it was determined that our labor rate should be $128.01. And that took effect in just this month. And it should be noted that rate is competitive with other local municipalities. And when you compare it to privately owned shops, it can range from anywhere from $145 to $155 an hour of labor rate. It's extremely competitive. And we have also realized that the procurement work, as in ordering and speccing and ordering vehicles, was also coming out of the operations budget instead of being properly funded. And this fully dedicated staff person whose work is now covered with a monthly fee per vehicle. Next slide, please.
Let me just also indicate one more thing, that it's really important for us to have a great record keeping. So having the fleet being there and making sure all the vehicle records in terms of maintenance and everything that's done on that vehicle is really clear and concise. Because in case there's some kind of incident, that's one thing that we go back to, or if there's so that reduce liability to the county. So that's one of the really key things that a lot of private service might not be doing as a great job, that we keep the record keeping for those vehicles until that vehicle is sold.
Thank you, Ahmad. So when I was interviewing for this position, I remember being asked how I would go about improving productivity. And I remember being surprised by that question, as I was a fleet mechanic for over 15 years, and I had never worked with a group of mechanics that weren't production focused. We like to produce results. We like to see things fixed. And so I was really curious about that perception. And after I got started and digging into some historical data, it became really clear that there were past practices that needed addressing. An average year of productivity or billable hours had been showing around 55 to 60%, which is very low. Along with the incorrect labor rate, that was contributing to us not collecting enough to cover the cost of operations. And just for your own information, the industry standard for billable hours or productivity should be from 70 to 75%. The remaining 25 to 30% is usually attributed to things like training, meetings, and personal time off, sick leave, vacation, things like that. So I worked with my team to teach them really the importance of how they should be charging their time while they're on the clock working for the county. I addressed some extended break time issues, trained and really just got them to understand the importance of billable hours. And this actually did really address the appearance of non-productivity. And as I suspected, it was not about the team putting out great work. It was about how they were not properly clocking on to different jobs and recording their work throughout the day. So in 2020, we were at 70.4% billable hours in 2020. It's a really great improvement. And I expect us to be a little bit higher than that this coming year, but that is on target. Next slide, please. So I'm going to turn this over to Eva for a few minutes so she can discuss our capital recovery plan.
Madam Chair, before we switch speakers, can we ask some questions on what's been presented so far?
Yes.
Thank you. So, Shay, I do have some questions and want to better understand, especially the billable hours slides that you just presented. But I love your depiction of to-do list everything. That I kind of feel like that every day sometimes. But for those priorities that you have, do you have dates that you are setting to complete your actions, or at least milestones to get to the objective on each one of those to-do list items? Do we have a real plan to make sure we can measure success on your goals?
This is the year's plan that has been, these are goals that we did achieve in 2020. This is what the work that was completed last year. The only things that and at the end, I'll be talking about where we plan on going from here to continue improvements. But this was really what I had set out to fix, and so to speak, so that we could start to build off of that. Sustainability is going to be a big one that we're going to be talking about. But for what I've presented, this is what was accomplished in 2020.
Okay, yeah, so so the things on your to-do list you've already accomplished?
Yeah, this is just kind of like the year in review, just so you can understand. I started, my first day in the office was February 3rd. And so this is just kind of a recap of what Ahmad and Eva and I have focused on. You know, when I came in, it was a mess. It still has a lot of work to be done. But this is just so you can kind of understand what I've been doing for the last year. Okay,
so let me focus on the billable hours. I'm not sure I understood that. Standard of 70 to 75%. Is that in a sense looking at recovery of the billable hours? So there's another way to say that is you have 25% administrative overhead costs from training.
correct.
Okay.
Correct. And so when we develop our shop labor rate, we are making sure that we recognize that people take vacation, they have sick leave, we have internal training, there's meetings and those sorts of things. So when we make 70 to 75% our billable goal, that is factored into our shop labor rate so that we recognize the rest of that generally goes toward administrative costs. When I came in and we were around 55 to 60%, the ugliest way to say that is that 65% of the time, sometimes mechanics would be here and billing nobody for their time, recovering nothing for the work that they were putting in. So it was important that they understood how this all works. So if they're working on a parks department vehicle, whether it be shuttling or going to pick it up, or even forklifting stuff for parks around the yard, which ends up happening just because we are labor available, it became important that they understood that parks needs to pay for that work.
Okay, so unless, yeah, go ahead, Ahmad.
Hey, Councilor, just to add to what Shay said. So one of the things that also contributed on our deficit, because the labor rate was low, and then the cost recovery or the billing was low. So that contributed almost $8 million or so in our deficit. So that's another reason that we need to review the billing and rates and also the cost recovery. So that covers the rest of the activities. So because we want to run it like a business, like a enterprise fund, that making sure that everything stays whole. And the other thing I wanted to add in terms of measurable success and the goals, this will be our third year that I require all the divisions to present a work plan. So we're going to be actually later in January, we have a retreat with all the divisions that they're going to present their work plan. And within that would be the resources they have, the goals they're setting for the year. And then at every quarter, we're going to check in to see if they're able to achieve those goals and if we need to adjust anything like that. So in terms of 2021, we are going to be developing additional goals that Shay and her team are working on for 2021. And next year, hopefully we'll come back, do the same thing, and give you a presentation of our accomplishments for the 2021.
Thank you. So one last question as to this. So now we've attained 70% plus of billable hours. Do we have any backlog on actually transferring those bills to the users? I mean, is it instantaneous, or are you a month behind, or are you a quarter behind in actually billing against different accounts?
We bill monthly. So there's no backlog. We're closing out last year's December's as we speak. But yeah, no, there's not going to be a big surprise dump of bills if you're on our customers, which I guess is a good question. No, it has been every month we bill monthly.
Very good.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
also a couple of questions about the productivity. Productivity being an input-output measure, I just wanted to be sure I understood that your billable hours is the way that you measure productivity.
Well, I mean, I guess for the baseline of numbers, yes, but we also, we look at things like how we're doing with PM compliance, how we're keeping up on our PMs, how long it takes for repairs and that sort of thing. So there are general work productivity and produce. What am I trying to say? Sorry, results of actual work coming out and our customers being able to use their equipment. This is the general way of checking to make sure that we are billing the work that should be billed, but we're not billing for things like training and meetings.
And how are those output measures looking?
Well, they're looking good. Yes, we have. We were down a couple of staff, so I did end up hiring. We had a retirement, and I've hired 2 staff over this last year, which has made a big difference in making sure that we stay caught up. Major projects like getting ready for snow and ice. We got that done in November. Now we'll be looking into getting ready for park season. So everything is cyclical as well. And as long as our customers have what they need when they need it, that's a big measure of success for me.
It is indeed, and for me too. So I like having that expansion of the measurement for productivity.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. I think that's a great point, and that's something that we're going to be developing. And I think Eva will probably get into a little bit on this data because there's several ways that we measure our success. One of them is making sure safety is number one, that we have providing safe vehicles, especially for our sheriff's department, that they're available and they feel safe when they have to go pursue or respond to the first responders. And the other thing is the customer service, that they make sure that they know they can count on us anytime. If we have to go and respond to them in the field or whatever they are, like for example, Public Works road crew, that some equipment breaks down, we go respond to them right away so that the productivity is continuing not only for us, but also for the other division and the other departments. But this is, right now we're creating this benchmark in terms of how creating the data so that we can measure that. And also the other thing that we're going to be doing is sending a survey to our customers. So what are the things that we're doing right? What are things we're not doing right? So we'll build that data and present that to make sure that we're doing and staying competitive. Just like as I mentioned in the beginning, we want to run this like a business. We want to make sure that we are cost neutral and whatever comes in and goes out, so we don't have deficit and provide a very highly competitive product to our customers.
And Ahmad, just one thing, just following up on that, Ahmad, the things that you mentioned are supremely important, of course, in the operation of our fleet. I had a question, and maybe it has been answered, but I just want to make sure that I'm listening right, etc. But as far as productivity, are you also measuring against, for instance, what a private shop, how long, for instance, a private shop would take to change a carburetor, change the oil, etc. Those things, are those part of the industry standard measurements that are used, Shay?
They are, and to be perfectly honest, though, they are not as readily available through our fleet information management system as I would like. And this is another topic that we'll get to farther a little later on. But there are, they would call them FIMS, but they're basically our software that we use to create work orders, order parts, all of that sort of stuff. There are better systems out there that can actually allow comparative times, right? So if we know that we're doing an oil change on a patrol vehicle, that can be programmed into our fleet information management system, or not ours, but a good one, into one of those systems. And then literally when a mechanic goes to clock onto that job, it has a timer, a comparison timer, so that they know that they're staying on track. Most of these jobs do have, your standard times. It is important to be careful when you do compare with manufacturer times and things like that. They do this in a financially competitive way, right? So if a mechanic is working on something that's warranty and it pays 3 hours, that 3 hours is probably in real life a 5-hour job. But because mechanics work flat rate, they have to really beat that time. And truthfully, when they work on warranty vehicles, they only get paid 50% of what they would be paid at flat rate. So there's some comparisons that we want to be careful about, just because we're not here to make money. We're here to just provide a service. And outside entities don't take it from that perspective. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay. So if there aren't any other questions, I think Eva can carry on with her part of the presentation.
Eva, thank you.
All right. Thank you, everyone. So as Shay spoke about earlier during this presentation, in 2020, we identified about a $19 million deficit in our capital replacement fund balance. And as you can see on this graph, a portion, that's that first portion of that $19 million gap, was due to undercollecting on capital replacement. Basically, we had a lot of new vehicles back in 2010, 2011, but we were not consistent in collecting to replace those vehicles over time, creating that very substantial gap. The second portion of this gap, that operations overage impact, is actually related to the fees that were recalculated for fleet. We were under collecting to cover administrative cost and staff time. So the outcome of all of this was a fleet that was, on average, approximately 12 years old, and a fund balance that was not sufficient to replace the vehicles and give us a buffer for operating costs. So next slide. Thank you. So to address this deficit, we came up with a 3-step solution. The first step in the recovery plan was the creation of a projection model for capital replacement. This model simulated purchasing new vehicles and collecting capital replacement each year, and took a snapshot of that data set so that we can, in an informed way, look at fleet health over time, step by step. The second step in our recovery plan was to divide the capital and operating ledgers. So if you look at the fleet fund prior to 2020, it was one pot of money. And so the fact that we had an overage, due to not collecting enough on operating costs, wouldn't necessarily be immediately visible because of the fact that it was a single balance. So we've broken that out now into a capital balance and an operating balance, separating out the color of money so that we can explicitly track and report on the dollars that should be set aside for fleet maintenance and the dollars that are used to cover those administrative costs and staff costs. The final step was to create a fund balance policy for the Fleet Services Fund, where we critically evaluated the purpose of our capital collections and set a target for what those collections should be with a risk management and a fund management lens. And of these three steps, the first two have been completed and were finished during 2020. And the third, our fund balance policy, is nearing completion and should be submitted for review during the first half of this year. Next slide. So looking at the fund balance policy, the original collection target of $24 million actually amounted to 5 years plus the current year of replacements just sitting there in our fleet fund balance. The updated fund balance policy takes that down intentionally to 2 years of replacements. So the idea being how many years, and this is the question that we asked ourselves, how many years would it be reasonable to look at going without fleet collections, and what will we need to ensure that we could still perform capital replacements during that time? So by doing that analysis, we kind of looked at fund health and we looked at our current fund balance, and we determined that 2 years plus the current year was a reasonable number. And this, of course, involves actively managing our risk. If we fully collect for every single vehicle, yeah, that's a lot less risk for fleet management, but that's also a lot less dollars in our community. That's a $14 million gap. And that $14 million would just be sitting in the fleet management fund as a risk mitigation tool. So by intentionally managing our fund, having conversations with customers about priority, and keeping a very close eye and reporting on our capital balance, we're able to make sure that we can actually ensure that more dollars are able to make their way out into the community for services while we're still able to provide for capital replacements. Next slide. And finally, tying everything together, this slide shows the replacement schedule that arose from our capital recovery projection model. The darker green that you see here is our vehicles that are being replaced on schedule. So let's say in 2023, that would be 14 vehicles that are being replaced at the end of their life cycle. The lighter green area are vehicles that are being replaced behind schedule. And so you can look at this graph and see that based on these steps that we just reviewed, we will we'll have a healthy fleet within the next 5 to 7 years. At the end of this period, our average fleet age will decline from that 12 years to about 6 years. And this, will, of course, that will decrease our repair costs, that will improve the reliability of the fleet and decrease the impact of fleet downtime on our customers. And as Ahmad mentioned earlier, this will also give us data that we'll be able to use to actually build performance measures and look at performance metrics and report on those regarding life cycle cost, total cost of ownership, etc. And Shay's going to talk a little bit more about this later, but we do have a plan to replace the fleet financial system as well, which will make a lot more of this information transparent and accessible. And that's everything for me.
Thank you, Eva.
Questions of the council before we move on, just of this section?
Madam Chair, I just have a comment. So between Shay's presentation and Eva, just brilliant. Thank you so much. I mean, these slides look great, and I'm hoping we can achieve that. The one small question I have, reducing that fund balance, I'm curious as to how we even got to the 25 million range. Has that already been put into place, that we've now reduced the fund reserve? I see Ahmad shaking his head yes.
It has. So we've adjusted our target, and while we have not yet, submitted a formal policy, in which we will, we have, adjusted our target and our strategy around collections around meeting this target, because frankly speaking, the 25 million balance, it was a calculation based on zero risk. So we would hold all these years of, replacements in our fund. So that way we don't have to say, oh, well, what happens if we don't collect? We know we have it covered. But that's not actually zero risk, is it? It's just transferring risk from fleet services to our customers. And so it's not free to do that. And so that's why we looked at it and we asked some questions and we reached the conclusion, well, we don't need to carry that much funding and to try to collect on that. Taking those dollars out of the community and just putting them in fund balance is not really running it like a business.
Thank you. This is a breath of fresh air, especially compared to what I heard when Mercury did their report. Okay, Shay, you have more for us.
Yes, I do. So yeah, thank you, Eva, for that. Perfect. Next slide. As I mentioned earlier, there is a fully dedicated staff person that will be working on what I call equipment cradle to grave. And this means from spec writing and to all the way to the out of service and off to auction portion of fleet management. So we are putting together a standardized catalog of equipment for our departments. And by that, this means if you need a work truck, we have a catalog of options that stick with one specific manufacturer, and we can build it from what you need, but we're not going to have Chevy, Dodge, Ford, and all. We will be standardizing our catalog. It's going to go same idea across the board. We have formalized our approval process. George, who is the person in charge of procurement, works with the customer to spec out what is actually needed. And before anything is ordered, everything gets signed off by the customer, all the way up to me and probably Ahmad, to make sure that everybody's on the same page before we actually make an order. Coming soon, very soon, will be a vehicle acquisitions dashboard. This will be a one-stop spot for customers to be able to track the progress of their orders over the year. Updates with things like manufacturing updates, shipping updates, any potential industry issues like strikes or tariffs, sheet metal tariffs, things of those nature will be reported out on this vehicle acquisitions dashboard so that our customers don't just think that something got ordered and who knows what's going on with it. This is obviously an effort to be more transparent and communicative. We will be compiling data from our fleet information management system. And from that, we will look and see, okay, well, this is what our data shows that needs replacement. And we will be meeting with the individual departments and comparing, and comparing that with what they say their priorities are. So before we move forward on determining what a replacement year looks like of fleet, we will make sure that we used our best data and our customers' input to determine what really needs to be replaced in a coming year. And we will be on a fall to end of year schedule. And this is to solidify what needs to be purchased, have the spec writing done as much as possible so that when January 1 of the following year rolls around, we're ready to hit the ground running when it comes to procurement. Next slide, please. So interestingly and sadly, every fleet department that I have ever worked for, all have been supporting government. Fleet and customer department relationships are always strained. It's the weirdest and most annoying thing about trying to work with fleet is that customers generally just think that we are trying to boss them around, I guess, when it comes to what their equipment needs are. And there's other historical reasons for why this relationship seems to be so strained within the industry, but it is a focus of mine. I truly believe that if a fleet is running well, nobody even knows nobody even thinks about it. It's just going on in the background and nobody's worried about it and things just work. I also believe that customer departments should see fleet as a part of their resources for serving Clark County communities and rely on us as part of their tools. So This year, in an effort to improve our customer service and rebuild relationships, we have reconvened the monthly fleet advisory board meetings. When I first came on, I met with everybody, specifically with individual department heads, to understand what fleet can do better to serve our departments. Communication turns out to be the #1 issue. And staff and I have worked on getting in the habit of including our customers in our decision making. You know, the change to direct billing in 2019 was greatly impactful on budgets, and it became really important that we didn't just make choices without letting our customers know this repair is going to cost this amount of dollars, and give them the idea of what it looks like, what their spending looks like, and why. And in some cases, it's turned out that they really can't afford that repair and would much rather go without the vehicle. And it's important that we give them that opportunity rather than just do the work and bill them. So we've become very intentional and transparent about what we're doing for our customers. And we have worked really hard to start reducing the information silos, especially when it comes to budgetary changes. Next slide, please.
Just to add to Shay's comments about customer service, the other thing we've also implemented to have a scheduled meeting with customers in March, that we kind of give them an update on what vehicles coming in, where order status are, and also what their needs are. So that way we can develop a cost for them, and that way when they're ready to go for budget, they can include that as part of that. So that's been happening the last couple of years, and we continue to refine that. So that's been really helpful too, so that way the customers know exactly what their needs are, and we can provide them feedback. And that's why the importance of the catalog and what's available in standardization has become really important.
Thanks, Ahmad. So one of the things that we've also been working on is sustainable fleet practices, and they have really not been introduced into our program yet. So I will be starting to overlay different ideas as we move forward to see where we can start to explore improvements. Last summer, I earned my fleet sustainability certification through the same National Association of Fleet Administrators, in which I earned my fleet manager certification. This was very informative about our fuel diversification needs and the risks that we take on by our reliance on foreign oil. We need to start looking at electricity and renewables in the future. We developed an anti-idling policy that has been reviewed and agreed upon by our customer departments. It's gone to unions. I will say that everybody is, except for the sheriff's office, is on board, and this will be introduced to council soon for approval. It should be mentioned that anti-idling policies are the #1 easiest way to reduce fleet cost and find substantial fuel savings. And we've been also exploring telematics. For the past year, we've been trying out different solutions, and we are ready to move forward. Telematics are going to help us in a ton of ways, especially with anti-idle or idle reduction programs, driver safety, exoneration from fraudulent claims, and it will also provide us with actual data for more of our life cycle analysis and trying to reduce our total cost of ownership. And then our own data will help us determine good causes or good cases for potential electrification technology. Next slide, please. And finally, a patrol vehicle corral for the sheriff's office. Now, Councillor Medvedji, you in particular have mentioned frustration around automatic funding and replacement of patrol vehicles that get totaled early in their life cycle. This is a strategy that I admittedly stole from my time with the city of Seattle, but with you in mind, sir. From the patrol vehicles that went out of service in 2020, we kept 5, and we put them at what we call a corral. This corral of 5 will be kept by the fleet and out of service, only to be reissued in the case of a vehicle total. They remain upfitted except for radios, because that's an easy switch over. But in the event a patrol vehicle is totaled, a Corral vehicle will be reissued in place of that total for the remainder of the intended life cycle of the original totaled vehicle, or until the sheriff's office can come up with replacement funds from their operating budget for that early replacement. This allows us to continue collection to make the fund whole again before we purchase a new one. And this also eliminates the impact on the sheriff's office being down a vehicle until a replacement can be ordered and outfitted and serviced, which is usually a minimum of about 8 months. So this has been presented to the sheriff's office. They are in full support of this idea. We already have the Corral of 5 vehicles. And every year as we take vehicles out of service, we will always keep our eye out for the best conditioned ones. Those ones would then go into the Corral. The Corral will be, the old Corral vehicles will then go off to auction. And so, next slide, please. Just our continued improvements for 2021. I'm sorry, next slide. Thank you. We're going to move forward with our telematics rollout. We're going to continue to look at our life cycles analysis, analyze those, and we're definitely going to be updating those timelines. We have some fuel site improvements that the council has already approved that we will be moving forward with this year. We're working on policy and procedure updates, as I mentioned. This helps us stay in line with our APWA reaccreditation, but really we are going to be modernizing. This is going to be if you're looking for a specific timeline on that one, that's going to be years in the making. We're going to start with the most impactful ones, but this will be continuous work for years to come. We will continue to, repair the dedicated capital reserve fund and see it grow. I mentioned our fleet information system is subpar, and Eva had actually started working with my team to look into why we should be perhaps moving on to another solution. Her year, shockingly, got very, very busy. So this year we will continue looking into why and helping council understand how much manpower is going into keeping a poor system working with in cooperation with things like Workday and billing. So that will be coming in the future as well. And it's time to begin looking at fuel diversification. This is a huge risk factor that we need to start paying attention to, along with, we should be looking at more eco-friendly options as well, which also touches with fuel diversification. And fleet sustainability. It's just a conversation that hasn't been had very well around here, it's a big project. And so it's one that we're going to start picking away at so we can find ways to electrify, and we can help with programs for eco driving, which saves a lot of money, training drivers to quit with the hard stops and hard starts and those sorts of things. So there's lots of things that can be done and help all of our customers increase our sustainability. And with that, we want to thank you for your time and attention, and open it up to any more questions you may have.
Is there any final? Okay, Ahmad, go ahead. Go ahead.
Sorry, Madam Chair. Just want to add a couple of things for council information. Our fleet also provides services for the Clark Regional Wastewater Treatment District. So we do maintain their vehicles. I know we received some requests from the Washington State Troopers, see if we can provide services, something that Eva and I have talked about, and also with Shay in terms of if there's capacity becomes available, we'll probably provide that service for them. So just as FYI.
Ahmad, would that if you're talking about the state trooper vehicles, would that be, I'm assuming, just kind of this region or
Yes, for Southwest District, yeah.
Okay, all right, thank you. Are there other questions to the council or comments?
Just a comment.
Councilor.
I just want to commend you. Your work is really quality, and this is a large fleet. So congratulations, not just on the work that you've accomplished this last year, but in looking ahead, and that includes the financials. Good job.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions?
One comment and small question. So on the, I hadn't heard any reputation for lack of productivity until I saw that bullet. You know, maybe it's just something that never got to my level, but, and I'm just wondering, you know, you're going to reach out to the leadership of the different people that you support. What about a survey just to the rank and file people that are driving the vehicles? Have you thought of reaching further than just the leadership of each of the departments, just in case there's some area that you need to identify to address?
That's a great question. And yes, I have. And it became so overwhelming, I put it down and wanted to focus on other things, not because it's not going to be very valuable information, but because where do I start? I mean, do I want to start with just, you know, higher level and how do they feel things are going, or do we want a survey that goes out to each one of our, you know, that lays in the vehicle to each one of our customers that says, you know, please let us know how we did. And I also wanted to make sure that we had separated out our procurement process and started to get to work on that, because I already knew that that was a big source of frustration for our customers, and I knew why. So that is something that I did have on this list of stuff to do, but it is one of those things that I would like to get to, but I can't guarantee that that the capacity is there yet. Though I do completely feel that that is relevant information. I just couldn't figure out how deep I want to go, and then it just became, you know what? Let me work on stuff that I can feel like I can make progress on. You're on mute, sir.
Well, that as a general comment, I feel so pumped up after this presentation. I want to get a Team Fleet T-shirt and start wearing it around the county. Great work, great presentation.
That's very flattering, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Council, for your support and comments.
I completely agree. Other questions of the council?
Madam Chair.
Councilor.
Yeah, I just have a couple comments as well. So first of all, Shay, February 3rd is your first anniversary date with the county. So happy early first anniversary. And I will say, you know, having sat through a number of these fleet work sessions over the last 5 years, that it is really refreshing to see the amount of progress that that your team, Ahmad and Ava and Shay, that you've made. It's really refreshing. It really is. And I also want to say I appreciate meeting your team. I don't know over the years if we've actually ever had a chance to get a look at your team and who the real people are behind the work. So thank you for sharing them with us today. And I'm really looking forward to seeing the upcoming policy opportunities with regard to the anti-idling policy and the fund balance policy that we can actually take some action on. So, so yeah, thanks for the great work. And Ahmad, you've got a great team going there, and it's really nice to see the progress.
Thank you, Counselor. And just because I'm seeing your face, and it reminds me that, you know, we know that I came from Portland and I'm still living over in Portland. I am in process and waiting for my house in your district, Counselor Olson, to close here next month. So I'm fully committed. I'm coming over from Portland. I'm buying a house. I'm doing the whole thing. So
well, welcome
it's a
to Clark
pleasure.
County and District 2.
Yeah, thank you.
Chair. Just to echo what you're hearing from the rest of the council, this report's been fantastic to see and hear. And I remember when we first met you, a little over a year ago, and we heard about your plans and knew that you had a big job ahead of you, and love how you've taken it on, and it appears that in addition to building the fleet department, you're also building morale and making a stronger department overall. So thank you to you. Thank you to Eva for your strong work. We've gotten to see your strong work a lot over the last year. So yeah, keep it up. And thank you so much for all the work you're doing.
Thank you, Councilor Lentz.
Yeah, thank you, Counselor, for all the comments. And just to add, when I go and talk to the staff at the fleet, and they're really happier. Their work productivity is good. The morale is really positive, and they thank us for the changes been made. And one thing that's really, really been great because she brings so much technical knowledge. So when staff ask questions, she has responses to that. So that's probably one of the best improvement that has been made out there. It's just that the leadership that she's providing, the direction she's providing, it's been amazing. And then with finance portion of it that Eva's taking care of, it's just, I couldn't be happier, and I'm so pleased to have a team like them.
Thank you, Ahmad. It is, I agree with what you've said. You have a great team. Thank you all for participating so well and working so hard for the county. We appreciate it. Our taxpayers appreciate it. So thank you so much. And if there are no further comments, I think we will adjourn this work session. And I believe that we're going to go sign into another session. Is that right, Kathleen or Rebecca? Or do we stay on this?
Yes, it'll be a different WebEx. So if you can give us a couple minutes to shut down and start up, and then we'll make sure everybody's logged in. Thank you.
Thank you all. Have a great, happy New Year.
Thank you. All righty. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.